February 11th, 1979. The mist clung to the limestone cliffs of Lang Son province like a burial shroud. Along Vietnam's northern border, Buddhist temples stood as silent witnesses to centuries of invasion and resistance. The air carried the scent of incense mixed with damp earth and the metallic tang of approaching conflict. In one such temple, tucked between ancient pagodas and terraced rice fields, an extraordinary intelligence operation was about to prevent one of the largest military disasters in Southeast Asian history. The temple bells chimed softly in the pre-dawn darkness as elderly monks shuffled through their morning prayers. But beneath the weathered stone floors and behind walls decorated with golden dragons and lotus flowers, a different kind of devotion was taking place. Vietnamese intelligence operatives, disguised as Buddhist monks, monitored radio frequencies with equipment hidden inside prayer wheels and ceremonial drums. Their mission bore a code name that would become legend in the shadowy world of signals intelligence, Operation Silent Bamboo. The irony was profound. While world powers dismissed Vietnam's intelligence capabilities as primitive and outdated, a handful of operators using improvised antennas made from copper wire wound around bamboo poles were about to intercept communications that would save their nation from catastrophic defeat. The Chinese People's Liberation Army was massing for invasion, and only these ghostly voices in the static knew the truth. Captain Tran Vien Cong adjusted his saffron robes and pressed headphones against his ears. Through the crackling interference, he heard the mechanical voice of a Chinese radio operator transmitting in Mandarin. Divisions 55 and 42 advancing toward Pingxiang. Objective, cross border within 48 hours. The words struck him like lightning. After months of monitoring increased radio chatter and unusual troop movements, the long-feared invasion was no longer a possibility. It was happening. But when Kang transmitted his urgent intelligence report to Hanoi, the response was dismissive and cold. Military commanders, still exhausted from decades of war against France and America, refused to believe that China would risk a full-scale invasion so soon after Vietnam's victory in Cambodia. False signals, came the reply from Vietnamese military intelligence headquarters. The Chinese are merely testing our vigilance. Do not create panic with unverified reports. The contempt flowed both ways across the border. In Beijing, Chinese military planners had spent months studying Vietnam's communications infrastructure, concluding that their southern neighbors' intelligence capabilities remained primitive and Soviet-dependent. They still use radio equipment from the Korean War era, one Chinese signals officer reported to his superiors. Their intercept capabilities are negligible at best. We can communicate freely without fear of compromise. This mutual underestimation would prove to be one of the most dangerous miscalculations in modern military history. The Chinese High Command believed their operational security was impenetrable. Vietnamese leadership refused to accept that their powerful northern neighbor would dare launch a major offensive. And caught between these two walls of arrogance stood a small group of intelligence operatives who held the key to preventing disaster. Operation Silent Bamboo had emerged from necessity 6 months earlier, when Vietnamese border guards reported unusual activity along the frontier. Chinese construction crews were building new roads and improving existing infrastructure in areas that had no apparent economic value. Military truck convoys were spotted moving at night rather than during normal daylight hours. Most telling of all, Chinese radio traffic had increased dramatically in frequency and urgency. Captain Kang, a veteran of the American War who had received specialized training in Moscow at the GRU's cryptography school, recognized the patterns. He had learned to operate the Soviet R311 Omega receiver, a device capable of intercepting communications at ranges exceeding 200 kilometers. More importantly, he understood that modern warfare began in the electromagnetic spectrum long before the first shot was fired. The operation's cover was perfect in its simplicity. Buddhist temples dotted the mountainous border region, and monks moved freely between Vietnam and China as part of ancient pilgrimage traditions. The intelligence team established their listening post inside the Lin Phuoc Pagoda, a centuries-old temple complex that offered both excellent radio reception and natural camouflage. Prayer wheels were modified to conceal antennas. Meditation halls housed radio equipment behind false walls. Even the temple's bell tower served as a transmission platform. The technical challenges were immense. to avoid electronic detection by Chinese signals intelligence. Each transmission could last no longer than 90 seconds. Equipment had to operate silently to maintain the temple's meditative atmosphere. Power came from car batteries hidden beneath altars and recharged by solar panels disguised as decorative panels. The operators worked in shifts, maintaining constant vigilance while appearing to follow monastic routines. But the greatest challenge was credibility. Intelligence is only valuable if decision-makers believe it and act upon it. Kang's reports were technically accurate and strategically crucial, yet they contradicted the prevailing wisdom in Hanoi that China would never risk a major war while still recovering from the Cultural Revolution's internal chaos. The breakthrough came during the early morning hours of February 13th. Kang intercepted a Chinese transmission that included specific unit designations, movement schedules, and tactical objectives. The 55th Infantry Division was moving toward the border crossing at Pingxiang. The 42nd Armored Division had been repositioned to support the initial assault. Artillery units were pre-positioning ammunition dumps within range of Vietnamese border fortifications. The pattern was unmistakable. This was not a limited border dispute or propaganda exercise. This was preparation for full-scale invasion. As Kang transcribed the intercepted messages, his hands trembled slightly. The weight of responsibility was crushing. Thousands of lives depended on convincing his superiors that the intelligence was accurate and the threat was real. He encoded the message using a cipher based on Vietnamese poetry, a technique that made transmissions appear to be cultural exchanges between monasteries. The radio crackled to life as Kang transmitted his report. Silent bamboo to morning lotus. Dragons gather strength. The mountain awakens. Recommend immediate defensive preparations. To casual listeners, it sounded like religious meditation. To trained intelligence officers, it was an urgent warning of imminent invasion. The response from Hanoi was swift and devastating. Morning lotus to silent bamboo. Your dreams disturb the peace. Return to proper meditation. End transmission. In intelligence parlance, this was a direct order to cease operations and return to base. Kang had been officially discredited. But that night, something extraordinary happened. An elderly monk approached Kang during evening prayers and whispered urgently in his ear. The monk, whose code name was White Lotus, had just returned from a pilgrimage to Chinese temples across the border. During his visit to the temple at Pingxiang, he had overheard Chinese military officers discussing operational details with startling precision. The invasion would begin at exactly 05 hours on February 17th. Multiple divisions would advance simultaneously across several border crossings. The objective was not merely to punish Vietnam for its invasion of Cambodia, but to seize and hold significant territory in the northern provinces. The Chinese military expected to reach the city of Lang Son within 72 hours and establish a buffer zone extending 50 kilometers into Vietnamese territory. White Lotus had risked his life to gather this intelligence, moving carefully through Chinese-controlled areas while maintaining his cover as a harmless religious pilgrim. His information confirmed everything that Kang had intercepted from radio transmissions, but with added detail that could only come from direct observation. Kang faced an impossible decision. His superiors had ordered him to cease intelligence gathering and return to Hanoi, but he possessed information that could save thousands of Vietnamese lives and prevent a military catastrophe. His training told him to follow orders. His conscience told him to act. Working alone in the pre-dawn darkness, Kang dismantled the temple's radio equipment and carried it to a hilltop 3 kilometers from the temple. The location offered excellent radio propagation, but no protection from detection or retaliation. If Chinese signals intelligence operators triangulated his position, he would be captured or killed within minutes. Kneeling in the mud beneath a grove of bamboo trees, Kang assembled his improvised antenna using copper wire salvaged from temple prayer wheels. The bamboo poles served as antenna supports, their hollow cores providing perfect resonance for radio frequency transmission. This was intelligence work reduced to its most fundamental elements: one man, a radio, and the determination to be heard. At 03:17 hours on February 17th, just 90 minutes before the scheduled Chinese invasion, Kang transmitted his final message. Silent bamboo emergency protocol. Dragons advance at sunrise. All northern positions compromised. Immediate defense essential. He repeated the message twice, then destroyed his equipment and prepared to disappear into the jungle. The transmission lasted exactly 87 seconds. But those 87 seconds changed the course of military history. Vietnamese radar stations in the northern provinces suddenly came alive with activity. Electronic warfare officers who had dismissed Kang's earlier reports now scrambled to verify his intelligence. Within 30 minutes, aerial reconnaissance confirmed massive Chinese troop movements heading directly toward Vietnamese border positions. The invasion that could never happen was happening exactly as Kang had predicted. Emergency defense protocols activated across the northern frontier. Vietnamese militia units that would have been caught completely off guard received orders to evacuate civilian populations and establish defensive positions. Artillery batteries that might have been destroyed in their bases were relocated to concealed firing positions. Most crucially, Vietnamese main force units that had been scattered across the region were consolidated into defensive formations that could actually resist the Chinese advance. The Chinese invasion began precisely on schedule at 05 Sour hours. More than 200,000 People's Liberation Army troops crossed the border simultaneously at multiple points. Chinese commanders expected to face minimal resistance from surprised and unprepared Vietnamese forces. Instead, they encountered carefully prepared defensive positions manned by troops who had been warned of the attack. The battle for Lang Son became a grinding urban warfare nightmare for Chinese forces. Vietnamese defenders had abandoned the city center but established killing fields in the surrounding hills. Every street corner became a sniper's nest. Every building concealed anti-tank weapons. The Chinese advance, planned as a rapid mechanized breakthrough, devolved into a bloody house-to-house fight that consumed men and equipment at an alarming rate. Chinese casualties mounted rapidly as the invasion force encountered resistance that their intelligence had assured them would not exist. Vietnamese forces, though outnumbered, fought with the tactical advantage of prepared positions and detailed knowledge of Chinese attack plans intercepted through Operation Silent Bamboo. After 17 days of intense fighting, Chinese forces withdrew across the border, declaring their objectives achieved, despite having failed to establish any permanent territorial gains. The official casualty figures remain disputed, but conservative estimates suggest that Chinese forces suffered more than 20,000 killed and wounded. Vietnamese casualties, while significant, were substantially lower than they would have been without advance warning of the attack. In Beijing, Chinese military analysts struggled to understand how their carefully planned surprise attack had encountered such effective resistance. Post-conflict intelligence assessments noted unexpected Vietnamese preparedness and defensive positions that appeared to have been established in advance of our operations. The Chinese High Command never discovered that their operational security had been completely compromised by monks with radios. The temple at Lin Phuoc was destroyed during the Chinese advance, its ancient walls shattered by artillery fire. When Chinese troops searched the ruins, they found only the typical contents of a Buddhist monastery: prayer books, meditation cushions, and broken statues. No trace remained of the sophisticated intelligence operation that had operated from within its walls. Captain Kang never returned to his unit. His fate, like that of the other Silent Bamboo operatives, remains officially classified. But Vietnamese intelligence veterans speak quietly of heroes who disappeared into the jungle after transmitting the warnings that saved their nation from defeat. The psychological impact on Chinese military planning was profound and lasting. If a handful of Vietnamese intelligence operatives using improvised equipment could penetrate their communications security so completely, what other capabilities had they underestimated? The invasion of Vietnam, intended to demonstrate Chinese military superiority, instead revealed dangerous vulnerabilities in their operational security. For Vietnam, Operation Silent Bamboo represented something deeper than tactical intelligence success. It embodied the principle that had sustained Vietnamese resistance for generations: victory through patience, ingenuity, and unwavering dedication to national survival. Where others saw primitive equipment and limited resources, Vietnamese operatives saw opportunity and improvisation. The bamboo antenna technique pioneered during the operation became standard doctrine for Vietnamese intelligence units operating in remote areas. The flexibility and resilience of bamboo as an antenna material proved superior to rigid metal designs in jungle environments where equipment had to be rapidly assembled, concealed, and relocated. Modern signals intelligence officers study Operation Silent Bamboo as a masterclass in low-signature intelligence gathering. The operation demonstrated that sophisticated intelligence capabilities could be achieved through creativity and dedication rather than expensive technology. It proved that human intelligence sources, when properly integrated with signals intelligence, could provide strategic warning even against overwhelming odds. The broader lessons extended far beyond intelligence tradecraft. The Chinese invasion of Vietnam occurred during a period of global realignment following American withdrawal from Southeast Asia. The Soviet Union was expanding its influence while China sought to establish regional dominance. In this context, Vietnam's successful defense of its northern border helped preserve the balance of power in Southeast Asia. But perhaps the most significant lesson was about the nature of underestimation itself. Both Chinese and Vietnamese leadership made the fundamental error of believing their own assumptions rather than the evidence presented by their intelligence services. The Chinese assumed Vietnamese capabilities were negligible. The Vietnamese assumed Chinese intentions were limited. Both assumptions nearly proved catastrophic. The weather during those crucial February days added another layer of complexity to the intelligence challenge. Monsoon clouds affected radio propagation unpredictably, sometimes enhancing long-distance reception, while at other times creating dead zones where important transmissions could not be received. Kang and his team had to account for atmospheric conditions when scheduling their intercept operations and transmission windows. The temperature extremes of the northern Vietnamese mountains also affected equipment performance. Soviet-made radio receivers designed for European conditions sometimes failed in the tropical humidity of Southeast Asia. Battery life decreased significantly in high temperatures. Antenna performance varied with moisture content in the bamboo poles. These technical challenges required constant adaptation and improvisation. The human cost of Operation Silent Bamboo extended beyond the operatives who vanished during the Chinese invasion. Families in Hanoi waited for news that never came. Aged parents wondered whether their sons had died in the temple bombardment or had successfully escaped to continue their secret war. The intelligence community lost experienced officers whose training and expertise could never be completely replaced. Yet their sacrifice purchased something invaluable: time. The advance warning provided by Silent Bamboo allowed Vietnamese forces to implement defensive measures that minimized civilian casualties and preserved military capability. Villages that might have been overrun had time to evacuate. Supply depots that would have been captured were relocated or destroyed. Communication networks that could have been severed remained operational. The operational security measures employed by the Silent Bamboo team became legendary within intelligence circles. Their use of religious ceremonies to mask radio schedules was brilliant. Morning prayers provided consistent timing for intercept operations, while evening chanting concealed the sound of equipment operation. The visual camouflage was equally effective. Temple architecture naturally accommodated the antennas and cables required for sophisticated radio operations. The psychological profiling of Chinese communications personnel also proved remarkably accurate. Vietnamese intelligence analysts correctly predicted that Chinese radio operators would become less security conscious as their invasion preparations progressed. The final critical intercepts occurred precisely because Chinese forces had grown overconfident about their communications security. Intelligence historians now recognize Operation Silent Bamboo as representing a transition point in Asian intelligence warfare. Traditional human intelligence networks, which had dominated espionage for centuries, were being supplemented by signals intelligence capabilities that could provide strategic warning in near real time. The operation demonstrated that smaller nations could compete with superpowers in the intelligence domain through innovation and dedication. The geopolitical consequences of the operation extended far beyond the immediate military conflict. China's failure to achieve rapid victory in Vietnam influenced their approach to subsequent regional disputes. The demonstrated effectiveness of Vietnamese intelligence capabilities affected Chinese strategic planning for decades. Most importantly, the successful defense of northern Vietnam preserved the nation's independence during a critical period of regional instability. The technical innovations developed during Silent Bamboo found applications in subsequent Vietnamese intelligence operations throughout the 1980s. The bamboo antenna design was refined and deployed along Vietnam's borders with Cambodia and Laos. The temple cover technique was adapted for operations in other Buddhist countries across Southeast Asia. The rapid deployment radio protocols developed for the operation became standard procedure for Vietnamese military communications. Training programs established after the conflict emphasized the lessons learned from Silent Bamboo. Vietnamese intelligence officers studied the operation's successes and failures to improve their own capabilities. The emphasis on improvisation and resourcefulness became hallmarks of Vietnamese intelligence doctrine. Future generations of operators learned that technological limitations could be overcome through creativity and determination. The international intelligence community initially dismissed reports of the operation as Vietnamese propaganda. The idea that a handful of operators using improvised equipment could penetrate Chinese military communications seemed implausible to Western analysts accustomed to expensive satellite and computer systems. Only decades later, as classified documents were declassified and participants began sharing their experiences, did the full scope of the achievement become clear. Modern cybersecurity experts study Silent Bamboo as an early example of asymmetric intelligence warfare. The operation demonstrated that adversaries could not assume their communications were secure simply because their opponents lacked advanced technology. Innovation and human ingenuity could compensate for resource limitations in ways that traditional intelligence assessments failed to predict. The moral complexity of the operation continues to challenge intelligence professionals. Kang's decision to disobey orders and continue transmitting intelligence potentially saved thousands of lives, but it also violated military discipline and chain of command authority. The tension between individual conscience and institutional loyalty remains a central dilemma in intelligence work. Vietnamese military historians regard Operation Silent Bamboo as one of the most successful intelligence operations in their nation's history. The advance warning it provided prevented what could have been a catastrophic military defeat during a vulnerable period following the American War's conclusion. The operation demonstrated that Vietnam had developed sophisticated intelligence capabilities independent of its Soviet and Chinese allies. The human stories behind the operation continue to fascinate researchers and intelligence professionals. The elderly monk who risked his life to gather intelligence from Chinese temples embodied centuries of Vietnamese resistance tradition. The young radio operators who maintained their positions despite knowing they were likely to be killed or captured represented a generation of Vietnamese willing to sacrifice everything for national independence. The bamboo itself became a symbol of Vietnamese resilience and adaptability. Like the nation it served, bamboo bends under pressure without breaking. It grows rapidly in difficult conditions and thrives where other plants cannot survive. The choice of bamboo for antenna construction was both practical and symbolic. It represented everything that made Vietnamese resistance successful against larger and more powerful opponents. The electronic warfare lessons from Silent Bamboo influenced international intelligence thinking about communication security. The operation demonstrated that overconfidence in technical superiority could create vulnerabilities that determined opponents would exploit. It showed that effective intelligence operations could be conducted with minimal resources when guided by thorough preparation and innovative thinking. The geographical advantages that made the operation possible reflected Vietnam's deep understanding of its own terrain. The limestone mountains of the northern provinces provided excellent radio propagation, while offering concealment and protection for intelligence facilities. The network of Buddhist temples created a natural cover infrastructure that foreign intelligence services could not replicate or easily penetrate. Weather played a crucial role throughout the operation. The monsoon season that preceded the Chinese invasion created atmospheric conditions that enhanced radio reception at long distances. The cloud cover that frequently shrouded the border region provided additional concealment for intelligence activities. Even the timing of the Chinese invasion was influenced by weather factors that Vietnamese intelligence operators had learned to predict and exploit. The logistics of maintaining the operation over several months required careful planning and substantial local support. Food and supplies for the operatives had to be delivered without arousing suspicion. Radio equipment required regular maintenance and battery replacement. Backup communication systems needed to be established in case the primary installation was discovered or destroyed. The integration of human intelligence and signals intelligence that characterized Silent Bamboo became a model for subsequent operations. The elderly monk's observations confirmed and supplemented the radio intercepts, providing crucial details about timing and objectives that electronic surveillance alone could not have provided. This combination of intelligence sources created a comprehensive picture of Chinese intentions that proved strategically decisive. The sacrifices made by Vietnamese intelligence operatives during the Chinese invasion were never fully recognized publicly. Their families received no medals or public acknowledgement of their service. Their names do not appear on memorials or in official histories. Yet their contribution to Vietnamese independence was as significant as any military victory achieved on conventional battlefields. Today, the restored temple at Lin Phuoc attracts thousands of visitors annually who come to admire its architectural beauty and spiritual significance. Most remain unaware that beneath their feet lie the ruins of one of the most successful intelligence operations in modern history. The silence surrounding the operatives who served there reflects both the classified nature of their work and the Buddhist principle that the highest achievements are those accomplished without recognition or reward. The legacy of Operation Silent Bamboo extends beyond its immediate military impact. It demonstrated that intelligence warfare had become a decisive factor in modern conflict. It proved that technological innovation could emerge from unexpected sources and achieve strategic results that conventional military assessments deemed impossible. Most importantly, it showed that the human element remained crucial in an era of increasingly sophisticated electronic systems. The bamboo antennas that made the operation possible have long since rotted away, returned to the earth that nourished their growth. The radio equipment has been replaced by digital systems that would seem miraculous to the operators who tracked Chinese invasion forces with equipment that today's intelligence officers would consider primitive. But the principles that guided their work remain unchanged: dedication, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to national survival. In the archives of Vietnamese military intelligence, classified documents preserve the technical specifications of the bamboo antenna designs that proved so effective during Operation Silent Bamboo. These blueprints, drawn in precise detail by engineers who combined traditional knowledge with modern electronics, show how local materials could be transformed into sophisticated intelligence-gathering tools. The antenna patterns, resonance calculations, and frequency analyses reveal a level of technical sophistication that contradicted every assumption made by foreign intelligence services about Vietnamese capabilities. The specific bamboo species selected for antenna construction was Dendrocalamus giganteus, commonly known as giant bamboo, chosen for its exceptional strength-to-weight ratio and natural electrical properties. The hollow culms of this bamboo variety possessed the perfect diameter and wall thickness to serve as waveguides for radio frequencies in the VHF and UHF bands. Vietnamese engineers discovered that the natural silica content in the bamboo walls actually enhanced signal propagation, creating antennas that outperformed conventional metal designs in certain frequency ranges. Detailed construction techniques developed during the operation combined ancient craftsmanship with cutting-edge electronics. Bamboo poles were carefully selected based on age and moisture content, then precisely cut to quarter wavelengths for optimal antenna performance. Copper wire was wound in spiral patterns that followed traditional Vietnamese decorative motifs, disguising sophisticated electromagnetic designs as religious ornamentation. The resulting antennas appeared to be temple decorations, but functioned as highly effective communication systems. The psychological warfare dimensions of Operation Silent Bamboo extended far beyond its intelligence-gathering mission. By demonstrating that Vietnamese forces could anticipate and counter Chinese military moves, the operation created doubt and uncertainty within Chinese command structures. Post-conflict analysis of captured Chinese documents revealed that Chinese commanders began questioning the security of their own communications systems and modifying operational procedures based on their belief that Vietnamese intelligence capabilities were more advanced than previously assessed. Chinese intelligence services launched intensive counterintelligence operations following the invasion, attempting to identify and neutralize Vietnamese intelligence networks along the border. These efforts consumed significant resources and personnel, but ultimately proved unsuccessful because they were based on incorrect assumptions about how Vietnamese intelligence operations functioned. Chinese counterintelligence officers searched for sophisticated electronic installations and professional intelligence operatives, never suspecting that their communications were being intercepted by monks in temples using equipment hidden in prayer wheels. The cultural dimensions of the operation reflected deep understanding of regional religious traditions. Buddhist monasteries had served as centers of learning and communication throughout Southeast Asia for more than a millennium. The movement of monks between temples created natural cover for intelligence activities, while the monastic emphasis on silence and contemplation provided perfect operational security. Chinese forces respected religious sites and personnel, creating a protected environment where intelligence operations could continue even during active combat. The training program that prepared operatives for Silent Bamboo combined traditional Vietnamese military instruction with specialized electronics courses taught by Soviet advisors. Participants learned to maintain and operate complex radio equipment under primitive field conditions. They studied Chinese military organization and communications procedures. Most importantly, they were taught to think creatively about problem solving when conventional resources were unavailable. The selection criteria for Silent Bamboo operatives emphasized psychological resilience over technical expertise. Candidates underwent extensive evaluation to identify individuals capable of maintaining cover identities for extended periods, while living under constant threat of discovery and execution. The ability to function effectively while isolated from normal command and control structures was considered more valuable than advanced technical knowledge, which could be taught during training. Religious instruction formed a crucial component of operative preparation. Team members spent months studying Buddhist theology, meditation practices, and monastic routines to ensure their cover identities would withstand close scrutiny. They learned to conduct religious ceremonies, recite prayers from memory, and demonstrate the quiet dignity expected of Buddhist monks. This spiritual training proved as important as their technical education in ensuring operational success. The equipment modifications that enabled Silent Bamboo required innovation and precision engineering. Soviet R311 receivers were extensively modified to operate from battery power and function silently. Cooling fans were removed and replaced with passive heat sinks, fabricated from temple metalwork. Display lights were dimmed or covered to prevent detection. Volume controls were bypassed to allow audio monitoring through headphones exclusively. Every modification maintained technical performance while enhancing operational security. Power generation represented one of the most challenging technical problems faced by the operation. The remote temple location had no electrical grid connection, and generator noise would have compromised operational security. Solar panels provided clean, silent power during daylight hours, but were disguised as decorative roof panels to avoid detection. Battery systems were hidden beneath altar floors and accessed through concealed panels that appeared to be part of the temple's ancient architecture. Communication protocols developed for the operation balanced security requirements with operational necessity. Transmission schedules were synchronized with religious observances to provide natural timing patterns that would not attract attention. Message formats incorporated Buddhist terminology and philosophical concepts to disguise intelligence content as religious discourse. Encryption methods were based on classical Vietnamese poetry, creating codes that appeared culturally authentic while maintaining cryptographic strength. The network of supporting agents that enabled Silent Bamboo extended throughout the border region and into China itself. Pilgrims, merchants, and religious officials provided intelligence about Chinese military activities while maintaining their normal routines. This human intelligence network complemented the signals intelligence gathered by the temple operation, creating a comprehensive picture of Chinese capabilities and intentions that proved strategically decisive. Logistic support for the operation required careful coordination and absolute discretion. Supplies had to be delivered to the temple without arousing suspicion among local residents or Chinese intelligence services monitoring border activities. Food shipments were disguised as religious donations. Technical equipment arrived hidden in religious artifacts and ceremonial objects. Even replacement personnel had to be infiltrated gradually over several months to maintain cover security. The medical challenges of maintaining operatives in the field for extended periods required innovative solutions. The isolated temple location made emergency medical care impossible without compromising operational security. Team medics received advanced trauma training and maintained supplies of antibiotics and surgical equipment. Common ailments were treated using traditional Vietnamese herbal medicine, which was consistent with the Buddhist monk cover identity and effective for most routine health problems. Weather monitoring became a crucial operational capability as the team learned to predict atmospheric conditions that would affect radio propagation. Traditional Vietnamese weather lore combined with basic meteorological instruments disguised as temple fixtures, enabled accurate forecasting of communication windows. This knowledge proved essential for scheduling critical intercept operations and transmission periods. The emotional toll on operatives living under deep cover for months at a time was severe and largely unrecognized. Isolated from family, friends, and normal military support structures, team members had to maintain their assumed identities while knowing that discovery would result in torture and execution. The Buddhist philosophy they studied as cover gradually became a source of genuine spiritual strength for many operatives, providing psychological resilience during the most dangerous phases of the operation. Counter-surveillance techniques developed during Silent Bamboo incorporated both electronic and human elements. Radio frequency monitoring equipment was used to detect Chinese electronic surveillance efforts. Visual observation posts were established to watch for unusual activity near the temple. Most importantly, the team cultivated relationships with local residents who could provide early warning of approaching Chinese intelligence personnel or military patrols. The destruction of evidence protocols ensured that no trace of the intelligence operation would survive if the temple were overrun by Chinese forces. Radio equipment was rigged with explosive charges that could be detonated remotely. Documents were prepared using special inks that would dissolve when exposed to specific chemicals. Even the bamboo antennas were designed to be quickly disassembled, and their components scattered to appear as ordinary temple maintenance materials. Post-operational analysis revealed that Chinese forces had unknowingly provided some of their most valuable intelligence through routine administrative communications. Supply requisitions, personnel transfers, and equipment maintenance schedules transmitted in clear text revealed the true scale and timing of the invasion preparations. This administrative traffic proved more valuable than the encrypted tactical communications that had demanded the greatest analytical effort. The influence of Operation Silent Bamboo on subsequent Vietnamese intelligence doctrine was profound and lasting. The principle of using indigenous materials and local cover for intelligence operations became standard practice. The integration of cultural camouflage with technical sophistication influenced counterintelligence training throughout the Vietnamese military. Most importantly, the operation demonstrated that patient, methodical intelligence gathering could provide strategic advantage even against overwhelmingly superior conventional forces. International reaction to the eventual disclosure of Operation Silent Bamboo varied significantly among different intelligence communities. Soviet intelligence services expressed admiration for the technical innovations and operational security achieved by their Vietnamese allies. Chinese intelligence officials initially dismissed the reports as propaganda, but gradually acknowledged the operation's effectiveness in classified internal assessments. Western intelligence agencies were forced to reconsider their assumptions about third-world intelligence capabilities and the potential threat posed by low-technology, high-innovation intelligence operations. The environmental impact of the operation was minimal, but symbolically significant. The bamboo antenna systems required no permanent modifications to the temple grounds and left no lasting ecological footprint. When the equipment was finally removed, the antenna sites returned to their natural state within a single growing season. This harmony between operational requirements and environmental preservation reflected traditional Vietnamese values that emphasized living in balance with the natural world. Educational programs developed after the conflict incorporated lessons from Silent Bamboo into the curriculum of Vietnamese military academies. Case studies of the operation were used to teach problem-solving skills, resource management, and the importance of innovation under pressure. Students learned that technological disadvantage could be overcome through creativity, dedication, and thorough understanding of both enemy capabilities and one's own environmental advantages. The declassification process that eventually revealed details of Operation Silent Bamboo occurred gradually over more than 2 decades. Initial disclosures came through academic researchers studying the Sino-Vietnamese conflict. Military historians gained access to operational documents as veterans began sharing their experiences. Intelligence professionals published technical analyses that revealed the sophisticated methods employed during the operation. This slow emergence of information ensured that national security was protected while allowing the historical record to be preserved. Modern military communication systems incorporate design features intended to prevent the type of interception achieved during Silent Bamboo. Frequency hopping radios, encrypted digital protocols, and burst transmission techniques make signals intelligence gathering far more difficult than it was in 1979. However, the fundamental lesson of the operation remains valid. Determined adversaries will find ways to exploit communication security weaknesses, particularly when defending their homeland against invasion. The memorial established at the restored Lin Fuok Temple acknowledges the sacrifice of those who served during the Chinese invasion without revealing specific details of their intelligence activities. A simple stone inscription honors those who listened in silence and spoke only truth, a tribute that captures the essence of their service while maintaining operational security. Visitors who understand the reference recognize it as one of the most understated memorials to intelligence heroism in modern history. The technological legacy of Silent Bamboo extends beyond its historical significance to influence contemporary discussions about sustainable technology and appropriate design. The operation demonstrated that effective technical solutions could be developed using local materials and traditional knowledge. Modern engineers study the bamboo antenna designs as examples of how natural materials can be incorporated into sophisticated electronic systems, particularly in developing nations where conventional materials may be scarce or expensive. The philosophical implications of the operation continue to resonate within Vietnamese culture. The image of monks using prayer wheels to conceal antennas while fighting to defend their homeland embodies the synthesis of spiritual and temporal concerns that characterizes Vietnamese Buddhist tradition. The operation showed that religious faith and patriotic duty could be harmonized rather than placed in conflict, a lesson that influenced Vietnamese national identity throughout the subsequent decades of peace and development. The silence that has surrounded Operation Silent Bamboo for more than 4 decades reflects not shame or failure, but the ultimate success of an intelligence mission that saved a nation from invasion while leaving no trace of its existence. In the shadowy world of intelligence warfare, perfect success is measured not by public recognition, but by objectives achieved and secrets protected. By that standard, Operation Silent Bamboo represents one of the most perfect intelligence victories in modern history. The voices that crackled through those bamboo antennas on cold February mornings in 1979 have been silenced forever. The men who risked everything to transmit warnings of invasion have disappeared into history's shadows. But their legacy lives on in every intelligence officer who understands that innovation and determination can overcome any technological disadvantage, that the human spirit remains the most powerful weapon in any nation's arsenal. As we remember these forgotten heroes who operated from shadows and chose honor over recognition, we must ask ourselves, what would we sacrifice to protect what we hold most dear? How far would we go to warn others of approaching danger, even if our warnings might not be believed? The winds that once carried radio signals across the mountains of northern Vietnam now whisper through restored temple grounds where tourists come to admire architectural beauty without knowing the full story of what occurred within these walls. The bamboo groves that provided materials for impossible antennas continue to grow and bend in mountain breezes. Their rustling, an eternal reminder of flexibility, triumphing over rigidity, of local wisdom overcoming technological superiority, of quiet dedication achieving what violence could not. In temples throughout Vietnam, monks continue their ancient practices of meditation and prayer, their voices joining in chants that have echoed through these mountains for centuries. Among them, perhaps, are veterans of forgotten conflicts, who chose to find peace in the same traditions they once used as camouflage for war. Their silence is not empty, but full of meaning, not surrender, but ultimate victory, the knowledge that when their nation called, they answered with everything they possessed. If this story of courage, innovation, and sacrifice has moved you, please share it with others who appreciate the hidden heroes of history. Like and subscribe to honor the memory of those who gave everything to keep their nation free. Their story deserves to be remembered, and their example continues to inspire those who defend liberty in our own troubled times. In the end, their greatest triumph was not the intelligence they gathered or the invasion they helped repel, but the proof they provided that the human spirit, guided by love of homeland and armed with bamboo and determination, can achieve the impossible and change the course of history itself.